afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Guardians in Goodyear, Arizona. Spring training underway with the first official workouts for pitchers and catchers. The Cavaliers officially on the All-Star break, getting ready for this weekend's All-Star festivities. Their games wrapped up last night. And Browns getting ready for the Combine in a couple of weeks with plenty of draft and other news in the NFL. ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr., longtime draft analyst, why he thinks it makes sense for the Browns to take Abdul Carter at number 2 overall.
This is a situation where you have some pieces in place. Keep in mind, for as bad as the Browns appear right now, they beat the Ravens and the Steelers, miraculously, right? Beat the Ravens and the Steelers. So you'll get the Cleveland Browns say, okay, take quarterback. Well, if you love the two, we know there are 2 elite players in this draft. That'd be Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. Quarterbacks aren't, even for me, that as highly rated as those guys, and they're not even close to what the guys were last year. How about the whole LaDainian? Remember LaDainian Tomlinson went to the Chargers and they got Drew Brees in the second round? Okay, so maybe you go Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, whoever is left over that Tennessee doesn't take, right? Because you need both those guys. So you take the one that's left. Second round, you had Jackson Dart, one of the Steelers. I hated that pick. Okay, I hated the Steelers taking Jackson Dart there, but I like Jackson Dart as QB3. Jackson Dart's their early second round for Cleveland. You got to think about whether you like Jalen Milroe, Will Howard, whether you like Kyle McCord, Tyler Shock. There's going to be other quarterbacks that you have to figure out between now and late April that will be in line to be an early, mid, late second round pick, third round pick, right? So the Browns could go that route. Yeah, remember, Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick. Kirk Cousins was a 4th-round pick. Once in a while, you catch lightning in a bottle in the 4th round. Maybe one of these quarterbacks drops the round 4. So you go that route.
Again, Mel Kiper talking to Field Yates, who had mocked Abdul Carter number 2. He also mocked Jackson Dart to the Steelers in the first round. So that was the back and forth there. Bo Bishop from Cleveland Browns Daily talking about his thoughts on number 2 overall relative to the Browns.
I think that there's this thing of like, well, if Abdul Carter, we draft him, and everybody said he's generational, then everybody was wrong and we were wrong too, but we weren't on our own. And I think the one thing that is frustrating is this notion that there's a big reach to Shedeur or Cam. Everybody has him in the top 20. Mel Kiper has him 3rd and 4th overall.
Jeremiah's got him in the top 15.
He's got them both in the top 15. So it's not like we're saying, hey, man, we got to take Dylan Gabriel too because he's the best. He's the best of the quarterbacks that are out there. Let's take Jackson Dart number 2. That's not what we're saying. We're saying there's 2 quarterbacks who are universally viewed as first-rounders, top 15 across the board, and in some cases top 5. How's it a reach to take him at 2?
It's not.
And those are valid points. If, in fact, Andrew Berry has those 2 quarterbacks ranked that high, it's an easy decision. If you have them in the 20 range, it's not so easy. You got to be right at number 2. Myles Garrett was the number 1 overall pick, and Denzel Ward was the 4th overall pick. You got to get a guy like that when you're drafting that high in the first round. Some other news from the draft and the Combine. Travis Hunter, guy that is projected to be one of the top overall picks, was invited to the Combine as a cornerback. So he will do the cornerback drills, not the wide receiver drills. Hunter played both ways at Colorado when he won the Heisman Trophy. This is also the crazy season relative to news and talk with teams coming out. There were reports that the Steelers picked up the phone and made an offer to the Jacksonville Jaguars for Trevor Lawrence. They reportedly offered a 1st and a 4th and a 2nd next year for Lawrence and a 6th-round pick this season. If Trevor Lawrence gets traded, it's going to be for probably a whole heck of a lot more than that. And I would also think if the Jaguars are at all willing to listen, that Andrew Berry picks up the phone and calls Jacksonville to see if they might be willing to deal Trevor Lawrence. But we'll see. Crazy reports happen this time of the year relative to that all the time. But if Lawrence is out there, that's a guy that Andrew Berry will definitely kick the tires on. Cavaliers wrapped up the quote-unquote first half of their season last night in Toronto. They are now on the All-Star break. Cavs again had a great first quarter. Darius Garland drives to the basket, no problem at all. Cavs opened up a big lead in the first quarter again. Garland on the drive again. He had 15 points and 8 assists. Darius this time kicks it out. and Donovan Mitchell hits the 3 ball. And Donovan Mitchell rolling from behind the arc early as well as he hits another 3-pointer, 21 points, 6 rebounds for Mitchell. DeAndre Hunter, another big game as Hunter shown his range, top of the key, hits the 3 ball that time. And again, why'd they get Hunter? The 3 and the D, this time the corner 3. 18 points, 6 of 12 from the field. Cavaliers pulled away in the first quarter, never looked back. 131-108. They defeat the Raptors. Kenny Atkinson asked about his team's approach last couple of games before the All-Star break.
I thought first quarter we really came out and defended and shared the ball. Some lapses in transition defense if I was to be picky, but listen, love the guy's mindset. I mean, these aren't easy games, especially on the road. Real credit to the guys coming out with good focus.
You mentioned mindset, and look, these past 2 games before the break, you beat the opponents by over 20. So what does that say about that mindset and mental focus of the group?
I think we're hungry. You know, this is a hungry team. Like I said before the game, ambitious, and we're mature. We got great leadership, and it shows in these type of games.
Cavs going to the All-Star break with the best record in the Eastern Conference, half game behind the Oklahoma City Thunder for the best record in all of basketball. Will be well represented this weekend in San Francisco for the All-Star game. Guardians' first workout of spring in Goodyear, Arizona, and the bullpen was a big reason why. And bullpen had a number of young guys step up. Guys like Hunter Gaddis. Gaddis was converted as a part-time starter, full-time bullpen guy last year. Proved to be a great move for both Hunter and the Guardians. 6-3 with a 1.57 ERA. He pitched 74 2/3 innings, struck out 66, walked only 14. Opponents hit just $166 against him. Gaddis learned quickly about the challenges of being a reliever and being ready every day. He knows he'll need to be good again to help that bullpen out, and he knows there will be challenges for both him as well as the bullpen.
It's got to be difficult, right? You know, baseball ain't easy, but I don't think we're really too focused on the numbers or trying to repeat anything. I think we're trying to repeat, team success for sure. Just trying to put us in the best spots to win. I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I think I learned a lot about, more on the mental side of like always being, especially being in that reliever role for the first time for a full year, is just always being ready when your name's called. Just go out there and give 100%. Where, I'm used to, taking a couple of those games off and getting ready for the next start. So I think I learned a lot about, staying prepared for each and every day.
And the Guardians, again, will need that bullpen to be every bit as good as it was last year, and it was really good. Young guys like Gaddis, Cade Smith, they add Paul Sewald, you have Emmanuel Clase. So you got a lot of guys, and bullpens are funny things. Year to year, you don't often get the success. Guardians hoping to get that success again this season. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead, we're talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come. I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
Sports4CLE continues. We are on the Browns as our topic. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, Dave, it's Mike from West Virginia. I wanted to talk about Myles Garrett a little bit. Myles Garrett is a generational talent. When somebody's not happy and they happen to be the best player on your team, it can really affect everybody else. Now, with that being said, he's 29 years old, but ever since that car wreck, if I'm not mistaken, he's never really got that left shoulder corrected, and he's been playing with that. I know he gets doubled and triple teamed. And then this past year, this foot issue came up. So knowing that he's nicked up, if you could get a king's ransom for him and draft Abdul Carter, then I think it's a home run, and then you've got all those other picks to get younger. Take care of Dave. God bless. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. I don't disagree with any point that the caller made. The one thing that I will say, the thing the Browns have to work through, it still is a big cap hit. If they trade him pre-June 1st, it's it's $36 million off this year's cap. If it's post-June 1st, obviously you don't get the picks this year, and then you can spread it out over a couple of years. There's no easy answer relative to what to do because you've renegotiated and you've pushed kind of that back because you thought you were in a Super Bowl window. That's why you renegotiate the contracts. Every time you push the cap number back renegotiating, it comes back to get you if you try to trade them or do anything before the end of that contract. So there are some financial things that they need to work through. And again, that's $36 million. Dead cap means counts against your cap and you don't do anything with it. So it's $36 million you can't spend to improve this year's roster. Nick Wilson from 92.3 The Fan. Relative to some things that the Browns might consider if they end up drafting Shedeur Sanders with that second overall pick.
Browns' biggest sin with Deshaun was they never really considered it wouldn't work out. I think you really have to consider what it could be like if it doesn't work out with Shedeur to like the nth degree. Because we said, well, the second best thing can happen is he comes here, stinks, and a year from now you draft another quarterback.
Right.
Yeah, but guys, specific to Shedeur, if he stinks here, it's going to hurt a hell of a lot more than if any other quarterback stinks here next year. Because you're going to hear about it from Dion every week.
Well, I don't care about that at that point.
I think you will.
I don't disagree with you're going to hear about it from Dion, but Andrew Berry can't worry about that. If you evaluate Shedeur Sanders to be the best quarterback and he's available and you think he can be your quarterback for the next 10 years and be above average, if he's a top 10 or a top 12 quarterback, if you evaluate him and think he can be that quarterback, you have to take Shedeur Sanders without question. Let's welcome in Ashley Bastock, cleveland.com. So Ashley, the thing is if you take Shedeur, worst case scenario, he's not great. You're going to hear from Dion. That cannot factor into the decision. And I know I'm a guy that said you got to make sure that he's not going to pull a Manning and make sure he's away. Once he's here, you don't worry about any of that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can let that determine whether you are going to draft Shedeur Sanders and have that be your true deciding factor. And I look at him, I look at Cam Ward. I think what's important for the Browns is as they evaluate them, who do they think is their guy? And maybe there's a world where they look at this quarterback class and say, we just don't think that guy's there. In that instance, I think then you start looking at Travis Hunter, you start looking at Abdul Carter, right? Some of your other premier positions, and address quarterback in another way, maybe free agency or via trade. But I think if there's someone you think has the potential to be a winning quarterback at the NFL level, you have to take a chance on that guy. Maybe it would be a guy they take later, but if you think Shedeur Sanders, there's certain things you like about his game, you certainly can't let the potential for Deion Sanders' involvement going forward to convince you not to take him. I think that would be kind of silly.
So let's talk a little bit about Myles Garrett. We kind of touched on it. There was a voicemail that said, he's not going to be happy, and that can affect a lot of people. And I don't argue with that. But I know you wrote an article just, the public trade request and kind of how, Browns fans are kind of conflicted. And what about the whole situation?
I think it's been really interesting over the last, now we're almost at the 2-week mark from when he requested that trade on February 3rd, the Monday before the Super Bowl. And initially, I think the fan reaction from the outside looking in may have surprised some people because it was largely, I thought, supportive of Myles. There are certainly people who don't want him to leave, who would love to see him in a Browns uniform. But for the most part, I think fans are so frustrated with the Browns after going 3-14, after seeing everything they've gone through post Deshaun Watson trade, that for them it became easier to understand why, hey, we're frustrated as fans. Of course, our star player who's given 8 years and a big chunk of his prime, probably realistically, is also going to be frustrated and want out. But I thought as the Super Bowl week went on and he was making the rounds on Media Row, doing his media tour, going on ESPN, The Rich Eisen Show, Sirius XM, CBS, all these interviews he gave, I thought you saw the tide begin to turn quite a bit, actually, and making it more negative. And the fans I talked to, I think some of them understand the negotiating side of this and the art of the deal in the NFL, in that when you're this public about wanting to be traded, you're actually harming the team's leverage to do that. Now, the Browns, of course, have said, we're not trading him. We have no interest in that. But hypothetically, if you're talking about making deals, if you are an opposing team and know Myles Garrett wants out, you're going to try to maybe hold out a little bit longer, let more of that contract come and go, since the Browns have him for 2 years still, and offer the Browns less in return for him. So I think that rubbed some people the wrong way. And just, I know one fan I talked to used the term mean-spirited in regards to how some of these comments have come off, even if that's not what Myles Garrett is intending, of course, when he's going out there. Some fans are viewing some of these things as, oh, well, when he says he doesn't think the Browns can win now, what does that mean to the players and everyone else that he would in theory be leaving behind? What does it say about them? So I thought all really valid points from the fans I spoke to.
Yeah, and again, there's no easy answer. I know you and Mary Kay and Dan Lobby have talked about this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. There are reasons that the Browns probably shouldn't trade him, other than the fact that he's a really good player. What are some of the things that you guys talked about that they may not trade him because of?
Well, I think the money is one thing, right? Plus the fact you do have him wrapped up for 2 years. And if you gave him an extension, it would help your cap space for the future because you could spread all his money out over a longer period. But right now it's like $36 million in dead cap, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great for a team that is already going to have their cap troubles and dead cap money for guys who are no longer on the team, right? So financially, it's not really that feasible. And for me, what I've talked about is draft picks. If that's what you're getting in return, I understand why fans get so excited over first-round picks and maybe viewing this as an opportunity to recoup the 3 they lost when they traded for Deshaun Watson. But realistically, draft picks are unknown entities. You don't know what they're turning into. You don't know who's going to be available. You don't know what each draft year is going to look like year in and year out. It's almost like a marketing strategy for your fan base as opposed to something tangible in return. Now, I know obviously analytically why the Browns think they're valuable, but I just think even though Myles Garrett is getting older, he's a sure thing. So it makes it really tough to want to deal him. But the financial implications of it alone, I think, are what make it toughest. And he wants to go to a contender, right? That's kind of his talking point. The reality is contenders are not going to have the draft capital the Browns want. And in a lot of cases, they might not be able to make that deal financially feasible for themselves. You look at the Lions, right? If you sent Myles Garrett to the Lions, you wouldn't get a high pick in return. You would get basically a second round pick because it'd probably be in the 30s or in the low 20s. And the Lions are going to have to worry about paying Aiden Hutchinson within the next couple of years. How would you pay Myles Garrett and Aiden Hutchinson, plus all the other amazing guys you've hit on as the Detroit Lions in the draft? And it's led to some of your success, but pretty soon you're going to have to figure out how to pay everyone. So I think when it comes down to it, the financials are a big reason to not deal him.
So I think you also wrote an article, and it's really interesting, the Browns 2025 quarterback wish list, and it involves, trade of number 2 that's kind of the godfather, the one you can't refuse, Shedeur Sanders at number 2, and then the Kirk Cousins question. Take us through those.
Yeah, I think, still a proponent of listening to offers for that number 2 pick. And I think if you do that, it's, of course, in the Browns' best interest to want to talk up the top of this draft class. And I think what that offer would look like for me is maybe not only additional picks, but 1 or 2 key veterans. Like, truly, this is an offer that's almost unrealistic at this point. But I always think proven veterans, for the most part, are going to be better than rookies. And this just seems to be like a weaker draft class overall. Now, I think where maybe my thinking has changed on that a little bit is if you don't want to take a quarterback at number 2, I do think Abdul Carter is a really great edge rusher, and Travis Hunter is an athletic freak. I think those are 2 guys who would certainly be worthy of that number 2 pick. But if you can get more battle-tested veterans in return for it, I would consider the deal. And then Kirk Cousins, for me, still almost remains the most feasible veteran option right now, mainly because there's a really good chance you're going to be able to get him on the cheap for closer to that veteran minimum number, maybe just over $1 million. And I think that might be a really good bridge scenario for the Browns. And obviously, Kirk Cousins has that built-in Kevin Stefanski familiarity. Those 2 worked really well together when they were in Minnesota. Kirk Cousins put up some career numbers working in a Kevin Stefanski offense. So that's kind of what led me there. And Shedeur remains, I think, the more interesting prospect between himself and Cam Ward to me. But I think a big part of that is we've just heard from and seen Shedeur a bit more than Cam Ward. No one's really heard from Cam Ward since the season ended. He wasn't at the Senior Bowl, wasn't at the Shrine Bowl, wasn't doing interviews there. So really, we're not going to get a chance to hear from him until the Combine in 2 weeks. So almost exactly 2 weeks, actually, from when quarterbacks are due to talk. So I'm really curious to see how the narrative continues to shift there. But I think Shedeur has been kind of really impressive in how he's handled this draft process so far, and some of what we've seen from him in college that, there's some worries there and some worries about his ceiling. But I also think there's kind of this element of him that no one really knows what to make of certain aspects of his game. And that could end up being a positive for him.
The more I hear him talk, the more I could see NFL guys kind of rallying around him. I just think he's a guy that players would really respect. The way he conducts himself, he's used to being the guy.
He is, and I think some of that is, of course, his pedigree too, right? And having Deion Sanders as his dad. And I think so many times you get guys that come in the NFL and you hear coaches and players themselves talk about needing to learn how to be a pro. And I think Shedeur is still going to have that, right? Just because he hasn't played in the NFL before. But when Deion Sanders is your father and you've been under intense scrutiny because even though you didn't go to a quote unquote big time football school, you played with your dad as the coach at all of your college stops. I think that that experience, I guess, makes him more pro ready to me, and just the football pedigree he comes from. I think he's going to know how to handle those sorts of things. And guys talk about struggling with that transition all the time, whether it's more attention, whether it's not having to worry about school and devoting truly so much of your time, almost all of your time, to football when you're in season. I think he's going to be more prepared and know how to better handle that than a lot of people.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, Dave. This is Pat from Tiffin, Ohio. I just wanted to give you a take on Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders, and Myles Garrett. Do you think if the Browns were to draft Shedeur, that Deion could talk to Myles and talk him out of trying to get a trade and stay in Cleveland? Just my thoughts. Look forward to your answer. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Ashley, I think Myles has reached the Missouri state. The Browns need to show him some roster improvements to have him change his mind. I don't think anybody's going to talk Myles out of it.
Yeah, I think that's key. And, who knows? Because he's been insisting that it's not about money, but really the question that anyone who talked to him didn't get the chance to ask or didn't ask during Super Bowl week is, well, is there a price though? What if they offered you X amount of money and it was fully guaranteed? Would you continue to say? I mean, I remain curious about that because in most things in life, most things in the NFL, everyone has a price. I use the Deshaun Watson contract as kind of the ultimate example of this. The Browns were out of that trade at the time, right? And it looked like the other three teams were kind of leading the way, but all of a sudden, $230 million guaranteed sounded nice enough to bring them right back in the running. So in most instances, there is a price, but I'm curious about that for that reason, but also I do think the roster moves here are really what is going to talk as time goes on. And really the Browns are under not really a time crunch necessarily to trade him because, as we know, the cap hit for trading him pre-June 1st would be just untenable for this team right now for all the other cap issues they have. So realistically, you kind of have to let this year's draft compensation go if you would even get to a point as a team where you are considering dealing him. So you have time to make some moves, and maybe that will help mellow out this situation a little bit.
So I know you wrote an article about the Browns mock draft picks at number 2 after Myles' trade request in the All-Star game. So a couple of the guys, we've talked about Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Cam Ward, Mason Graham. None of them jump off the page. I like Abdul Carter probably the most. The concern I have with Travis Hunter is he's really good and he's really athletic, but you can't make him play wide receiver and cornerback at the same time at the NFL level. If you throw that all on him, aren't you setting him up for a little bit of failure? You got to pick one side of it.
Yeah, I think that would be the case with most teams. Whoever winds up with him, I think you're probably looking at him at one of those two because that would be a lot for a rookie. Now, I haven't really gotten to do the full Travis Hunter evaluation yet as we're kind of getting ready more for this draft process. I'm sure I'll get there soon, but I think that would be the case for most teams, unless someone says, hey, we think this guy is a rarity and he can handle both of these jobs. But I think it would be a lot. What I think is almost more feasible is you pick one and then you have special packages where you use him. Say maybe you want him to play DB. Okay, then you have some gadget plays where you can use him as a receiver, or hey, we want you to play primarily receiver, but maybe there's this rare nickel or dime package where we're also going to throw you in if you're up for it. So I do think that's an interesting element with him. I do think Abdul Carter has undeniably, ironically, become the most popular name for the Browns in the wake of this Myles Garrett request, whether it's to find the heir apparent or whether it's to beef up your pass rush alongside Myles Garrett if the Browns do, in fact, continue to dig their heels in and not deal him. I think it's been interesting, but it also maybe speaks to what outside evaluators think about this quarterback class, that they aren't all gunning for the Browns to take a QB at number 2. Most people are assuming they will address that need elsewhere or another way. So I definitely think it's fascinating. But as we know, the true evaluation doesn't start until all these NFL scouts and teams really begin digging in with interviews at the combine. Obviously, the All-Star games just happened, but the combine is the next big thing we have coming up, and I'm always curious to see how the narrative is going to shift after that.
Ashley Bastock, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Ashley.
Thanks, guys.
Ashley Bastock, make sure you check her out. Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Always insightful and really good Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report, straight ahead.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, Daryl from Dixon. I want to address the Myles Garrett situation. He allowed his contract to be restructured, which is why we have such a dead cap hit if we trade him. So I think he's just obligated to stay there these next 2 years, and then I think doing right by him would just be letting him become a free agent where he can pick wherever he wants to go. That's what a contract is an obligation. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. Jeff, I think there's a way that they structure the contract where they can renegotiate it without the player having much of a say. That doesn't matter. He gets the money up front. So the reason that structure is there is so you can't continually push the money back and then trade a guy. So that's the reason it is set there. Now, the Browns don't want to trade him, but restructuring it is what has created the cap hit. And they restructured it because they felt they were in a Super Bowl window, allowed him to go out and sign Dalvin Tomlinson and acquire Jerry Jeudy and then make the contract offer to him.
Well, and this is something they've always done, and I think most analytic franchises are doing it. Of course, you have to have a owner who's willing to play ball with you in this scenario. just like this offseason, the Browns can turn over and find $89 more million in cap space for this upcoming season. And that's before we even know what the 2025 number is. And the theory is yes. So this way you can still be paid like a Super Bowl player, a super, star player, and we can still find a way to put more, top end caliber players on the field as well. Look, there's no doubting that, basically it all backfired 3 years ago with the move they made. None of us are foolish. There's no even hash shit anymore. But the Browns, for all intents and purposes, had the perfect escape plan. The way this season went with Deshaun getting injured and then getting injured again, all you could possibly ask for was, hey, is there a way the Browns could be loaded with cap space, loaded now because they are players again in the NFL draft? Yes and yes. The problem is the one thing they need, there is no clear, slam, dunk, concise answer as to who could come in here and possibly change this franchise at the quarterback position. But otherwise, they had the perfect escape plan fall into their laps. The only problem is there's just no clear-cut guy.
So this is from NFL.com, and it will explain a little bit about why the Browns ended up at 3-14. In addition to the offense, this is ranking all 32 teams relative to tackling by missed tackles, and the Browns ranked dead last. 55% is what they grade out at, which is an F. Chiefs were first at 94.6. The Ravens were second at 93.8, and the Broncos were third at 92.0. Browns posted an 83.7 tackling efficiency, worst in the NFL. Denzel Ward missed a team-high 20 tackles, tied for third most among cornerbacks. A league-high 10 Browns players, so double figures in Browns players, missed at least 10 tackles. 3 of them didn't convert 70% of their tackle attempts. So there are a number of reasons for that. You're on the field a bunch. You're trying to create turnovers. Those are the 2 things that lead to missed tackles. And the offense being so bad and turning the ball over so much necessitated both of them. I can find reasons, but the bottom line is they still were the worst tackling team in the NFL by a number of metrics.
Well, I mean, you start with one major factor. Who should have been the leading tackler for the Cleveland Browns last year? Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Season ended early. And what were some of the positives, Dave, that we talked about, certainly back in 2023? It was hats to the ball. So even if the first guy was maybe only getting a piece, you want to know what? The runner didn't get any more yardage because he was slowed down just enough. There was the next guy to clean him up. When, again, I think you brought up some good points, certainly, about the amount of time they were on the field, certainly. And it kind of, missed tackling, it kind of gets like a virus. You know what I'm saying? One happens, then 2 happens, then 3 happens. It's kind of like when we've had our conversations about, dropping the ball, receivers and such. It just seems that once one happens, you get ready for that domino of others. It's something that obviously needs to be improved upon. Look, it is the number one aspect of what your job is as a defensive player in the NFL. Is it easy? By no means whatsoever, but it's extremely important. Denzel, a prime example, Denzel, everybody's always been so concerned for Denzel and the physicality in his head, which may or may not cause injuries. And, I'm not going to speak for Denzel here, but look, some of that gets in your head. And, are you trying to make sure that, hey, I'm not going to take a knee in the head when I'm bringing this guy down? It's a really, difficult game, as we all know, certainly. But, yeah, that's been a prime example. And I think, from 23 to 24, when you talk about things on that defensive side of the ball, look, there are a number of differences, certainly. But in 23, even if the first guy missed, it usually didn't make a difference. In 24, when the first guy missed, it usually meant, we're talking 10, 15 yards. They were back-breaking at times. And look, there was a lot of pressure on that defense. You kind of understand it, but you certainly cannot forgive it.
No, and the injuries are probably the reason there's 10, so 10 different guys because you had so many people playing. But again, there are a lot of reasons. You just got to fix it. You can't be the worst tackling team. You got to be near the top half of that to get that corrected. Nick Wilson from 92.3 The Fan on what Andrew Berry's moves, free agency, and during the draft might tell.
But I'll know exactly if Andrew Berry feels comfortable and feels like he's going to be able to see this thing through. I'll know 100% because he'll trade Myles Garrett within the first 7 days of the new league year, and he won't take a quarterback at 2.
Right, and again,
with a top 15 pick, we got to kind of get cute with the way we say it.
You see, and again, the hard part about these discussions is that we have no idea what ultimately is going to end up happening, but that's not the radio that we do. We can't do let's see it play out radio, so we just have to play with what we think is going to happen. And right now, it seems like they're really dug in right now, according to the messaging. They're really dug in, and that would suggest that Andrew Berry doesn't believe he's going to be here long term. And then the other, obviously, wave of emotions that we've had is the idea that now the Shedeur Sanders thing has gained a lot of traction, and that would also be something that suggests that Andrew Berry doesn't think he's here for a million years.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with either of those. I mean, I don't think you trade. And again, I think Nick and Jonathan do a nice job, but I don't think you trade Myles Garrett because it's a $36 million cap hit. You're going to roll $50 million over second most. I think the Niners were the most. They're rolling $50 million over, so they're not that far over the cap once the new league year hits and they find out that number. And as you said, they can get $89 million. The $36 million cap hit, if you trade him, means you have $36 million less to improve this roster. That's black and white. That's what it means.
Well, and the thing is and there's probably like like the approach to look at this. Is it going to be easier for the Cleveland Browns to find an acceptable trade offer for Myles Garrett that they're comfortable with? And keep in mind, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski probably, coaching and general managing, for their careers in Cleveland. Is there a trade that they can find more appealing, or with $89 million in cap space, the ability to sign whatever free agent quarterback they want, the ability to draft one of the 2 top quarterbacks in this class, whatever your feelings on, the Browns have every opportunity to do that. And they can say right now, today, if they wanted to, we will take Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders at 2. They can absolutely say that, and they will guarantee that they will get one of them. Does that maybe give Myles Garrett a change of heart when it's also followed with, yes, so we signed that veteran quarterback. We are going to draft a rookie quarterback at 2. We will now make you the highest paid defensive player in the NFL again. The belief for me is it's probably easier to sell that to Myles Garrett than the Browns to be in negotiations with the Buffalo Bills and say, well, all right, we'll pick 30. Maybe pick 27 next year. Where Myles thinks he wants to go is probably not a deal the Browns want to make. And you've seen people float out, oh, well, here's an offer from the Bears. Well, what makes you think the Bears are any closer to the Super Bowl than the Cleveland Browns are? But, look, at the end of the day, it's plain and simple. If Andrew Berry trades Myles Garrett, yeah, he's probably the general manager for 2025. But you might as well, go get the totes, go get the cardboard boxes, and be ready, because the day the season over, they're just going to say, all right, well, you guys, it's been swell, and, they're going to move on with the rest of their lives. You can't change the fact that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski think and feel they can be contending every year. And this franchise, for a long, long time, there was never the possibility of, hey, we could be a contender every year. Hell, there were times that, we're not sure we could be a contender for 5 years, 10 years. But these guys believe that they can put together a contending roster each and every offseason. And I just don't think now, where the pressure is on them more than ever, they're just going to, sway away from it.
No, I agree. Do you think they're forced to go quarterback at 2? I know you've addressed this on Browns 3D.
I think one of the biggest things with it and why you feel you might be forced is, look, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, never playing it down. Every Browns media member, every Browns fan will want to talk about the potential of Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, as opposed to talking about the utter failures of Deshaun Watson for the last 3 years and all of the other things the Cleveland Browns lost because of that trade, meaning the draft capital. Why are there holes in so many positional groups? Draft capital. Money. The money was never really the thing. Because what we have learned is they've always found a way to have money, to create more money. But there is probably a strong belief that, they want people to start talking about who the current quarterback is. Could they maybe satisfy that in free agency, which alters the way they can handle the draft and still draft a rookie quarterback to groom somewhere other than pick number 2? Yes, but media is pushing them. Certainly the fan base is pushing them. I tend to believe now that, my feelings aside of what I think of Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders and whether or not they are worthy of number 2 overall, if you think, and the way Barry and Stefanski do, that we will contend or at least have the ability to put together a contending roster every year, then their belief is we are not going to be any closer to number 1 ever again. And then the other final thought on it is, if we don't draft what we think could be our guy now, we may never get the opportunity to draft who we think our guy may be.
Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I would definitely bring in a Kirk Cousins or a Daniel Jones. To be honest with you, I'd bring in Joe Flacco and let him mentor the next quarterback because Joe's a total team guy. We know that for sure. I think Kirk Cousins is kind of for Kirk. Not as bad as Aaron Rodgers is for Aaron Rodgers, but you kind of get my point. Looking forward to y'all's take on that.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, I think you bring in the quarterback that you think can give you the best chance to win, so you don't have to rush a young guy if he's not ready. You know, the idea thing is maybe you see him develop and you feel like he's starting to see things a little, things are starting to quote unquote slow down for him. You bring him in, if the bye week's in week 7, you bring him in and, after the bye, something along those lines. If you draft the guy at 2.
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things, we discussed this yesterday talking about Kirk Cousins, is I think if you're considering Kirk Cousins, you better have a very strong plan B. I think you're in a situation where Pittsburgh was last year with Russell Wilson, where it's like, I don't know if he can give us the 18, 19, 20 games we're hoping for. So what would be the other option? If you're going to look at it from that standpoint, Daniel Jones at 28 years old, look, let his team, I'm not trying to pretend, I'm not trying to sell you a Honda and trying to pretend it's a Maserati. You just try to find the facts that are facts. And Daniel Jones in 2022 played pretty well. You look at who he played with, who his skill guys were outside of Saquon Barkley. It's nothing that you're going to write home about by any means whatsoever. You look at, 2 of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. At the time, both were drafted to winning franchises already in the Chiefs and the Ravens. 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now today were not week 1 starters. Pat did not play till the final week of that regular season. Lamar was eased in a little bit, and part of it was because Joe Flacco was banged up, and then they were in that weird situation where it was at the end of the year where Joe was banged up, didn't maybe have his A game anymore, and Lamar was more the better guy in that playoff game where they were almost going to take Lamar out, but he rallied and basically cemented that, he was now the new future of the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, because there's a couple of big things that could, kill whatever they do here if they do take a quarterback at 2. One of them would basically have him come in the building and say, you were the savior day one. It is your gig. Go get it. The other one would be, and this is something that happens a lot with these rookie quarterbacks who are drafted so early, they are drafted by a regime that says, we're hanging on by a thread. This kid's going to be our savior. We only won 4 or 5 games. We're fired. And now poor rookie quarterback goes into year 2 and basically has to do his rookie year all over again because everything is just brand new. We know the Browns need to bring in minimum 3 quarterbacks. And I'm not sure where DTR is going to stand in this when, basically it's all over come the end of August and we're getting a final 53. But, I mean, veteran who you think can be your starter and maybe could be your starter for the entire season. Another veteran, and that would be more of the one who maybe is going to work a little bit with said rookie, and then the rookie. You need, and again, there is not a full, a fall protection plan here. Every one of these guys that you get are going to have some flaws. So you better get as many of them as you can. And hopefully between the 3 of them, one of them hits.
So you mentioned this guy. So this coming out, NFL Rumors tweeting this stuff out. They believe that the Vikings are expected to sign Daniel Jones if Sam Darnold leaves. Remember, he signed as a free agent with the Vikings. The thought was to work with Kevin O'Connell in the event, Sam Darnold prices himself out of the, O'Connell. And if I'm Daniel Jones, I get what he's thinking. That works for Sam Darnold. Let's see if he can work it with me. If I'm the Browns and we don't, and Andrew Berry, and they don't get Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones becomes option number 2 for me.
Well, I mean, also here's the other thing though. But if you're Daniel Jones, that's great. Is J.J. McCarthy going anywhere? Because you want to know what? I can go play for the Cleveland Browns. I can go play for the New York Jets. I could probably go play for the Tennessee Titans. Daniel Jones, and he's going to have legitimate quarterback 1 options for him. Certainly has made a lot of money to this point in his career. But, within everybody, there is still that, well, I want to be the guy. And if that phone call comes and Daniel Jones is still 28 years old, those are phone calls most likely him and his camp are going to take. And it's not about, hey, well, what O'Connell did for Darnold, which sure, it was there. It was real. It was established. Yes. But it's the thing for Daniel Jones of, what do I want to sit here and wear a baseball hat and watch J.J. McCarthy embark on what can be a great career? And, the other thing is it's not like Daniel was there all this time. Right. Daniel went there basically because, he wanted to be, with a team that was going to basically play into the playoffs. It sounds great from a Minnesota Vikings standpoint. I just don't see how that standpoint is something where Daniel Jones and his camp are like, yeah, man, let's re-up and stay here in Minnesota and ignore the fact that some team might offer us 2 years, $40 million.
All right. This is interesting. This is from Pro Football Focus, player comps for some of the top draft eligible players. Now, Shedeur Sanders is not in their top 25 big board. He's not on there. So he is not on this list. But Travis Hunter, they comp to Champ Bailey. Abdul Carter, they comp to Micah Parsons. McMillan, they comp to A.J. Green. Ashton Genty, they have Alvin Kamara. I've seen Genty comp to LaDainian Tomlinson as well. Burden to Debo Samuel. Ibuka, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like that one. Cam Ward, that one is intriguing. Ben Roethlisberger, I don't see. I mean, I see the arm strength, but Ben Roethlisberger couldn't run. You just couldn't bring him down because he was so big and so strong.
Well, I think it's kind of the same thing. Ward is not any flashy guy with his feet. And there were times where, you watched Ben pick up 7 on 3rd and 6. And basically it was, well, nobody was ever going to, put their eyes or their attention on Ben. And, here's the one time in 6 weeks where he decided, to use his mobility out of desperation, to get where he needed to be. I'm actually with you. I think for Ashton Genty, you try to just, for me, a lot of the time and always, I'm watching this stuff with no volume. I do not want to hear crowd noise. I do not want to hear, and that's why we try not to watch certainly, game film. And you just want to look in stylistically. And, for the younger guys who do this, I know it's hard because you have a limited well of what you watched. But for me, having watched LaDainian Tomlinson when he was in college at TCU, and you just the grace in how he does it, it's a jump cut, with a stiff arm, and then all of a sudden open field. There is some really, really impressive guys in this class. And it's going to be weird how 2025, the draft class, is going to be known or going to be spoken of, because most of the time we always talk about the quarterback position. But there are positional groups in this draft that are absolutely stinking loaded. This can be a tremendous, tremendous draft class. And for a team like Cleveland, who has 12 selections, probably doesn't need to take them all. Yes, you may not be able to get the future quarterback for the Cleveland Browns in this draft class, but you can do a lot of damage, and you could certainly, if you get mid-level quarterback play, could certainly be a contending team again in 2025.
Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We will head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return. Stay with us. Full Court Action is a half-hour devoted exclusively to men's and women's basketball from across the Mid-American Conference. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Bacon. Join me at 6:30 Tuesday nights, and we'll meet the coaches and players from the Mid-American Conference who are making an impact in basketball. Full Court Action will spotlight the top plays and performances from all across the Mid-American Conference, with some historical action as well. Catch Full Court Action Tuesday nights at 6:30 on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd, host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
With our quarterback situation, Deshaun Watson, I heard a report come out that said that he didn't even bother to learn Stefanski's offense and he wanted things his way. And I can remember him being on his podcast talking about how he's a game changer and this and that and the other. Well, yeah, he certainly did change games this season. I think the only thing that Deshaun Watson's going to be able to do to ever be a decent quarterback again is humble himself and relearn what it was that got him to be good in the beginning. He's going to have to take some coaching, and not from somebody that's just going to tell him what he wants to hear. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, an Achilles is him coming back from two Achilles. He's going to have to change the way he plays the position, because he's not going to be as athletic. He's a little bit older, and he's coming off a shoulder and an Achilles. So there's a lot with Deshaun that's going to have to change.
I don't even know if you can get to that. And I think the biggest thing, and I know we've spoken about this over the years, Dave, is one of the things that nobody wanted to ever talk about was this isn't professional wrestling, where, hey, you might get paid better to be the heel. He's the heel of the NFL. He is not liked. And you know what? Everybody in Cleveland, I'm not saying they would have forgot about it, but they certainly would have put it on the very, very back burner if he was able to play. How do you function in life when you're just generally disliked? And it's it just got to be really, really difficult. When he walked into that room, everyone was kind of like, man, it's Deshaun Watson. And there were some guys that said, well, they're giving him $230 million guaranteed. They gave away our draft assets for the next 3 seasons. And, there's guys in that Browns locker room who were really good men. They've shown to be good men, in the locker room, representing the city, charity work. And you're not going to be able to fool me for a second, because there are some I've talked to that said, well, I cannot believe that they gave this guy the world. And, based off of the actions that he's done. And look, I'm not saying he can ever get over it. And I'm not saying he can't ever get over it and find his way to be a player again in the NFL. But, man, it's got to be really difficult on you mentally when basically anywhere you go, you walk in and you were hated from day one. It's his own doing. It is. But I don't know how one maybe gets past that, where they can just kind of, basically see the green grass in life, so to speak.
All right, before I let you go, this is kind of interesting. So you were talking about position groups, and Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network's draft analyst, had tweeted this out. He said last year he had a potential starter grade on 12 defensive tackles. This year, twice as many, 24 of them, ridiculous amount of depth at that position in this draft class. And oh, by the way, as you were talking about, defensive tackle is kind of an area the Browns would like to add some players in.
100%. You look at what the Philadelphia Eagles just did. And look, we know there's a history, certainly, with Andrew being there, working for Howie Roseman. It is something you're looking for. You want even more? Todd McShay had, I believe it was 25 defensive linemen that he believes could be in either his top 40 or top 50. Half of the entire class. And look, you always want defensive line play. But also what this means is you are going to get guys a round and a half later than where they would have normally gone in other draft classes due to the depth of position. So again, you want to make the overall roster better. You have every opportunity to get the quarterback, but maybe he's not there. But you can sure back up that defense. You can get some skill players. Whatever quarterback you come in is automatically going to get better because you upgraded skill players. There's a lot that can be done this offseason. Free agency and certainly through the draft. The free agent guard class is like none I have ever seen before in recent history. It is loaded. There is a lot the Browns can do. They just have to be patient, sort through it, and stick to what will be, hopefully, their plan. Do not listen to the outside noise.
Yep. They cannot force a quarterback if they do not judge one to be worthy. Jeff Lloyd, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
All the best. Talk to everybody next week. About a week and a half away from Combine, guys.
Sounds good. Jeff Lloyd, make sure you check him out. He is the host of Browns 3D on the Orange and Brown Report. See always really good Brown stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.